Well, first of all, the last time Agrofest happened was in February 2020. That is actually more than 2 years ago, when we had just gone into the pandemic. Because remember, what happened is that I remember in that year, February 2020, we were all anxious because we were hearing about these reports about coronavirus and what's happening in China and US, and we were hoping and praying that this thing does not affect us. And as it turned out, we were able to successfully hold it in February, the last weekend in February 20. Everything was at the 28th and 29th. And then everything in March, everything just broke apart, And I remember that vividly because, that it was a really tearing Agrofest, because it was the stress of worrying about that. And then, of course, that particular year, it was difficult because it was a year in which this thing was about to happen. It played on people's minds, but we were able to bring it out successfully. And that's one of the things that we had. 2022 was actually, it was a stop and start, because at the same time we again were going by the figures in terms of the number of cases that were being reported on a daily basis, and we felt then we had a chance. But then when we saw some of the numbers again, we said, look, let's stop, hold on a minute. But then I think what moved us in a certain direction is when we saw like certain changes in the protocols, and also to the vaccination rates, in terms of when we saw that more of the population was being vaccinated, that in itself. And also to, of course, the other thing is that as more protocols changed, we saw the possibility of actually holding it. Then when the government said that, look, we have to open back up, and there were certain things that needed to be done, I think that made us recognize that somehow we could possibly hold Agrofest if we did it within within a certain framework. And what we tried to establish it for 2022 was that if you're going to do it, let us do it in a framework, because what we want to do is to make sure that we put on an event in which we minimize the possibility of us, infections and things like that. And one of the good things about the agricultural sector, I've come to appreciate, is that when it comes to biosecurity, they themselves have practiced it. In fact, I want to say that even on farms today, biosecurity is one of the major practices that they have to use in order to protect the security of the animals themselves, because it is what you don't see that you have to worry about. And learning that, we know, for instance, the whole question of sanitation, because sometimes people don't appreciate farms have to sanitize constantly. You just cannot go on farms now in the same way that you used to. So we learning from that, we said, look, there's a possibility we could have done it. And what we also did too, we talked to some of our key stakeholders, and they sort of said, look, this is something we cannot all stay out of it all the time. Let's try and move it. And then government too, as a key stakeholder, when we talked to the minister, and they said, look, we have opened back up in truth and in fact, let's look at the possibilities. And that is what we try to do, look at the possibilities, discuss it, and see how we can actually do it in a way in which we can be biosecure, and using the biosecure practices that exist in the sector to actually put the things in place that we need to in terms of the event in itself. At the same time to recognize the businesses that have made a contribution to the show as sponsors, and some of them have been there every year. I mean, when I think of a company such as Pinnacle Feeds, who from inception, they have been there for the 17 years that we have done Agrofest, they have been there. At High Park, for instance, another company, they've been there every year for us. And we of course, we have the associations like the Barbados Egg and Poultry Producers Association. They've continued to at least help us to keep the event going. And we have some new sponsors coming on too. For instance, you have, the RC group of companies with their rums. I really want to say that, when they called and said they want to be part of it this year, I said, oh, of course, no problem. And they have actually jumped on it to say, well, and they're doing it in a very big way. So I really want to thank them. And also to Frosties coming in for the first time this year. Of course, that is affiliated with Chafet group of companies. And you know that it was meant for them to come on last year. Unfortunately, because of the you know, the whole COVID pandemic, they could not do it. But they're on now this year as first time, you know. And of course, the other companies that we usually get, such as Checkmont, always there. These are companies that are part of the Barbadian landscape that I think, you know, we need to recognize them for the fact that they continue to show that and work with us in terms of showing that agriculture is important, that it can make a contribution to the economic landscape, and therefore I really want to thank them for that at the same time. Of course, major sponsor that we've had is the government of Barbados, because one of the things is that, you know, again, we could not have held the show in any case without getting permission of the government, and the minister was very keen in terms of finding out, are we going to have it this year? And then he did say, well, I will encourage to have it, you know. And he ensured that, you know, again, that the sponsorship, which usually comes from the government, as a matter of fact, I think this year it was increased. I really want to thank him for the fact that he has encouraged it, and we are putting it out. I know that they're planning to do, I think the exhibit is going to be bigger than last year, from what I understand. So certainly they have played a big role in terms of trying to, you know, make sure that we get up there this year and don't feel that, look, we couldn't have it. So I really want to thank the government of Barbados too, at the same time too, who through the Ministry of Agriculture have ensured that we do it. And also too, now we talk about the government, you know, the theme this year is regreening, a Caribbean thing. And the Caribbean element of the show is even bigger this year because, for instance, normally we do have entrants from places such as Suriname and say Guyana. But this year, the overseas entrants are going to be bigger. So for instance, in terms of Guyana in itself, we'll see the largest entries of Guyana participants that we've ever seen. And I really want to, again, to, you know, thank the work of the Special Envoy in the Prime Minister's office, Alfio Wiggins, for, you know, promoting that concept. And we will of course try to ensure that those exhibitors who are coming from Guyana, of course we welcome them. And of course people will get a chance to compare their products with our local products, and in a way, in that kind of Caribbean Caribbean mixture that we're going to be having there at Agrofest at the same time.